I've always been the kind of guy who kept things buttoned up literally and emotionally. I wore iron shirts to work, always tucked in. I planned my weeks on Sundays, color-coded in a Google Calendar. I never let myself drift into things I couldn't control, except, apparently, when it came to Dr. Adam Hayes. The first time I met him was 6 months ago. I'd booked a routine physical with the new physician my insurance had assigned me to, not expecting much more than the usual questions, a cold stethoscope, and maybe a lecture about my cholesterol. But when I walked into his office, something shifted. He was standing by the window, reading over a chart, sunlight brushing the edge of his jawline. He looked up, smiled casual, easy on for a second. I forgot why I was even there. Since then I'd found excuses to come back. A weird ache in my shoulder, sleep issues, even a flu shot I could have gotten at CVS. Every visit was professional, of course. He never crossed a line, but I kept catching these pauses, the way his gaze would linger just a beat too long when we talked. The soft amusement in his voice when he said my name. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I wanted it to be. He was older than me, maybe mid-30s, with that confident, calm doctor seemed to inherit from years of keeping people calm while delivering heavy news. But beneath that, there was something gentler. He always asked how I was sleeping, not just physically but mentally. He made eye contact when most others just clicked through forms. And once, when I laughed too hard at a dumb joke I made, I saw the corners of his eyes crinkled like it genuinely amused him. Still, nothing ever happened. Nothing could happen, right? So when the clinic called to reschedule my upcoming exam due, to a staffing shuffle and said Dr. Hayes had an opening late Friday evening, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. Even though Friday evenings were usually reserved for bad TV and worse takeout, I said yes. It was only later that I realized how strange the timing was. Most doctors didn't take appointments at 7 p.m. on a Friday. But by then, I'd already told myself it didn't mean anything. Now, as I stood in the small waiting room, mostly quiet, the front desk abandoned save for a flickering screen, I noticed how the clinic had changed in the off hours. No hum of conversation, no soft chatter of nurses, just the tick of a clock and the faint sound of jazz playing from somewhere deeper in the building. I adjusted the collar of my shirt. I probably shouldn't have worn the fitted one, but everything else was in the laundry. I told myself it didn't matter. But I caught my reflection in the glass door, how my hand kept smoothing down my hair, how I'd spritzed on cologne out of habit. Yeah, I wasn't just here for a checkup. The hallway door clicked open. "Hey," Adam said, voice low. Kind of tired, but still warm. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Come on in." I smiled, probably too fast. "No worries. You're the one doing me a favor, squeezing me in after hours." He held the door open and gestured me through. "That's what I'm here for," he said. It like it was nothing, but somehow didn't feel like nothing at all. As I followed him down the hallway, watching the way his hand rested casually against the edge of the clipboard he carried, I wondered for the first time, really wondered if tonight might change something, if maybe I wasn't the only one who'd been waiting for an excuse. Asterisk, I'd seen Dr. Hayes-Adam. As I'd finally started calling him in my head maybe half a dozen times over the past several months, always for some minor thing. Always under the warm hum of fluorescent lights and the thin paper covering those stiff exam tables. It was supposed to be professional, and it always was, at least outwardly. But somehow, our conversations had a rhythm that felt more personal than they should. It started with jokes, dry, harmless little comments. "You again?" he'd tease when I walked into the exam room. "Are you trying to collect frequent flyer miles here?" I'd say, feigning guilt. "Figured I'd keep you in business. You're single-handedly funding my vacation." And yet, I'd grin. "You still haven't invited me." He'd raise a brow, lips twitching into that soft, crooked smile. "Keep showing up and I just might, and that was the problem." These weren't jokes you made to just any patient. Or maybe they were and I was just projecting. Either way, it got under my skin, warm and electric, and a little dangerous. Over time, our checkups got longer, even when they didn't need to be. He'd ask about my job, my weekend plans, if I'd watched that Netflix show he'd mentioned, Last time? I noticed how he remembered things I'd barely said out loud, my roommate's name. The way I hated grapefruit, my coffee order. I didn't have a lot of people like that in my life. Most of my friends were work friends good for happy hours and memes, but never the kind to really see me. Adam did, or at least it felt that way. The exam room tonight was quiet, soft lamplight instead of the usual harsh overheads. The blinds. Drawn. I sat on the table, legs dangling slightly, watching him skim my chart. "So," he said, without looking up, "still waking up at 3 a.m. every night?" I blinked. "You remember that?" He glanced at me, a knowing smile pulling at his mouth, of course. "You said it's when your brain decides to review every bad decision since middle school." I laughed, sheepish. "Yeah, that sounds about right. Still happening?" Sometimes I shrugged. "Not as often." "Progress," he said, scribbling something down. "Then, still avoiding dating apps?" I narrowed my eyes. "Are you writing that in my chart?" He smirked. "Strictly off the record." I hesitated, picking at the edge of the paper on the table. Still not sure there for me. He didn't push, just nodded and leaned against the counter, folding his arms. "That's fair." "They can be a little artificial." "Exactly." I said, grateful. "Like, here's a stranger. Now be charming." "You're pretty good at charming," he said too casually. That made me look up. His expression was unreadable, neutral, but his eyes stayed on mine just a second too long. There it was again, that moment, that pause. I swallowed. "You think so?" He didn't answer right away. Just tapped his pen against the folder in his hand. "I think. Some people don't need apps to make an impression." The air felt suddenly thick. My heart fluttered a quiet, ridiculous thing I tried to ignore. He cleared his throat. "Anyway," he said, stepping forward, "I'm just going to check. Your back and shoulders, like last time? You can leave your shirt on if it's loose." I turned, letting my feet hang off the side of the table. My skin prickled as he stepped closer, his fingers pressing gently at the base of my neck. "Any soreness here?" "No," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. He moved slightly lower, fingertips brushing just under my shoulder blade. "Here, still good." I could feel his breath when he leaned in, just a little. And for a moment I wondered if he could hear the way my pulse jumped. I stared straight ahead, afraid that if I moved I'd shatter the moment or worse, reveal something I wasn't ready to explain. "All right," he said eventually, voice softer now. "Everything seems in order." I nodded but didn't turn around yet. I wasn't ready for the distance. "So listen," he said, stepping back. "I have a favor to ask." I turned. "Yeah." Scratched the back of his neck something I had never seen him do before. "I'm helping out with a free health clinic this weekend. It's at the university, mostly student volunteers, but we're short a few people to help with intake. Thought of you?" I blinked. "Me? But I'm not medical." He smiled. "You're organized. You don't freak out easily, and you don't mind asking people a bunch of awkward questions." I laughed. "You mean you need someone to make awkward small talk while they wait for vaccines?" "Exactly." He tilted his head. "I'll be there. Could use the company." There was something in his tone, inviting but low, like he wasn't quite ready to admit how much he meant it. "I'll be there," I said without hesitation. "Great," he said, and there it was again, that flash of something behind his smile. Relief, anticipation, or maybe I was imagining it, but if I was, I didn't want to stop. We were quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You should get some rest. I'll email you the details." "Looking forward to it," I said, and as I stepped out of the exam room and into the quiet hallway, I realized something had shifted. It wasn't just the clinic this weekend, it was everything we weren't saying, pressing at the edges. The campus clinic was smaller than I expected. One of those pop-up setups inside a gymnasium with folding tables and extension cords taped to the floor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Hand sanitizer bottles lined the check-in desk. A line of students wound toward the corner where blood pressure checks and flu shots were being administered behind makeshift dividers. I was assigned the front table, taking names and making small talk with jittery undergrads. Adam floated between stations, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. Every so often I caught him glancing over just enough to make my chest do that annoying flutter again. By noon, the line had thinned, and I was nursing a warm coffee in a corner chair. My back ached. My fingers hurt from typing names into the tablet. I'd expected to feel drained. Instead, I felt content. "You still alive over here?" Adam asked, walking over with 2 granola bars and a bottled water. "Didn't think I'd lose my best intake officer to a paperwork overdose?" I smiled, taking the bar. "Barely. I've aged 5 years. You should check my blood pressure, just in case." "I think I'll survive the malpractice risk," he said, then nudged the chair beside me with his foot. "Mind if I sit?" He didn't wait for me to answer, just lowered himself beside me, a little closer than necessary. Our knees brushed. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. We sat like that for a few minutes, unbothered by the low murmur of the gym or the occasional burst of laughter from a group of students behind us. I didn't think volunteering would be this fun, I said, unwrapping the bar. Adam turned toward me slightly. "You're good with people." I raised an eyebrow. "You're surprised?" "No," he said quietly. "Just impressed." That word lingered between us. I looked down at my hands. "I'm not usually like this, around people. I fake it mostly." Adam hummed. "Same." I looked up.
Nice.
His eyes were on mine. Calm, steady, searching. There was a moment, just a breath, really, where I thought he might say something else. But then someone called his name from across the gym. He stood up, slowly. "I'll be right back." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of forms, coughs, and nervous students, who clearly hadn't eaten in 24 hours. When we finally packed up, Adam and I were the last ones there, folding chairs and loading supplies into his car under the bruised glow of a fading sunset. "You don't have to help carry all this," he said, struggling to balance a box of clipboards and folded banners. "I know," I said, grabbing a tote from him. "But if you throw your back out lifting that, who's going to check my imaginary sore throats next week?" He smirked. "You mean I'm not just your on-call placebo?" "Don't flatter yourself." He reached his car and he popped the trunk. As we loaded the last of it in, a sudden gust of wind slammed the gym door shut behind us with a loud bang. We both jumped. He laughed. "Well, that was subtle." I glanced at the darkening sky. Should probably grab my bag before they lock. The building. He froze. "Wait, didn't you leave your jacket in there too?" "Yeah. And my keys." He winced. "I think they already locked up." I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked. 1 bar. Then nothing. "Of course. Well," I said, exhaling slowly. "Guess I'm stranded." Adam rubbed the back of his neck, frowning. "I live 15 minutes from here. If you don't mind, I can drive you to grab your spare." I hesitated. The thought of being in his space, felt both thrilling and terrifying. But I didn't have much of a choice. "That'd be great," I said. His apartment was on the 2nd floor of a quiet building, tucked behind a row of oaks. Inside, it smelled like cedar and coffee. A book was splayed open on the kitchen counter, next to a half-finished crossword. A soft jazz playlist hummed from a speaker in the corner. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, locking the door behind us. "Shoes off if you don't mind. Grab a hoodie or something. Don't want you freezing to death before I drive you." I kicked off my shoes and sat at the edge of the couch. His place was tidy but lived in. There was a blanket thrown over the backrest, a framed photo of his dog on a shelf. The kind of quiet comfort I hadn't realized I missed. He returned with a hoodie and tossed it to me. "Here." I caught it. It smelled like his laundry detergent. Clean, woodsy. I slipped it on. It was soft, warm, too warm probably, but I didn't care. He sat beside me,
Oh.
stretching his arm over the back of the couch. Our legs were touching again. So he said after a pause, "Be honest. Did you actually enjoy today?" I looked at him, a crooked smile forming. "I did. Mostly the free granola," he chuckled. "Figures." I turned slightly, resting my elbow on the cushion between us. "Why'd you ask me to help, really?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Because I trusted you'd show up." That's not really an answer. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "Because I like who I am around you." That hit deeper than I expected, and before I could respond, he reached up just barely and brushed a piece of lint from my shoulder. His fingers lingered. His gaze dropped to my lips, then flicked back to my eyes. He didn't lean in, but he didn't need to. My chest tightened. Every nerve in my body buzzed, and all I could think was, if I close this distance, everything changes. But he didn't move. Neither did I. The silence stretched, not awkward, just heavy. I finally said, glancing away, "Probably text my roommate to get the spare key ready." "Right," he said softly. "Of course." He stood up, but not before his hand brushed against my, gentle, deliberate. Another pause. Another choice not made, but it was there, everything unsaid. I didn't say much during the ride back. The hum of the engine, the soft rattle of his keys in the cue folder, it all felt louder than it should have. Adam glanced at me a few times at red lights, but didn't press. The air between us was thick. With all the things we hadn't said back at his apartment, my body still felt warm from the hoodie I hadn't returned. It smelled like him, subtle, woodsy, and now laced with a memory I wasn't sure I could forget. When we pulled up outside my building, I sat there for a second, keys in hand, not moving. "Thanks for the ride," I said. He gave me a tight nod. Of course, but neither of us moved. It's not yet. I looked at him. Finally really looked at the way his hands gripped the steering wheel even though the car was parked. At the quiet set of his jaw, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, then hesitated. "No, not really." That made him turn toward me fully. "What's wrong?" I don't know. I don't know how to say what I'm feeling right now without risking everything." He blinked, lips parting slightly, but he didn't speak. He waited. So I kept going, the words unraveling before I could stop them. "Adam, I've been second-guessing myself for months. Every time I come in for some dumb reason, every flu shot or fake complaint, I tell myself it's just in my head that you're being nice, friendly, professional, and I pretend like I'm not looking for more." His expression didn't change, but something softened in his shoulders. A quiet tension released. "But I can't keep pretending. It's not after today. Not after your apartment." The way you looked at me, my voice cracked. It meant something, didn't it? He looked at me for a long time, so long I started to regret saying anything. And then he said, almost too quietly, "Yeah, it did." That single admission hit me like a slow wave. Didn't crash it, settled, wrapped around me. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "You were supposed to be another patient. A chart. A few follow-ups. But then you started showing up. And I started waiting for it." He ran a hand through his hair, glancing out the windshield. "Every time you left, I told myself not to read into it. That it was just harmless flirting. Nothing more. But it wasn't harmless. Not to me." I felt my throat tighten. "Then why didn't you ever say anything?" He let out a breath, half a laugh and half a sigh. "Because I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to risk that I was wrong, that you'd pull away. Maybe it's selfish, but I'd rather be in your life at arm's length than not at all." Silence hung between us like a thread, fragile and golden. "You weren't wrong," I whispered. That made him look at me again. "Fully, I felt it," I said. "Every time you remembered something I said, every time your hand brushed mine and you didn't pull away, I thought maybe I was imagining it, but I hoped I wasn't." His jaw clenched. "You weren't." The tension that had been pulling tight in my chest for weeks snapped not violently but quietly, like a door finally creaking. "Open after too long. Can I tell you something stupid?" I said, my voice shaking with nerves. He nodded. "I wore cologne the last 2 times I saw you. Just a little. Kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, but it did. It meant everything." Adam smiled, soft and a little sad, like he was mourning the time we'd wasted, I noticed. That made me laugh, a little breathless. "Did I wanted to say something?" he said, eyes not leaving mine. "But you already had me off balance." We were both quiet again. I looked down at my hands, then back at him. "I don't know what happens next," I said honestly. This isn't like the movies. There's no big speech or perfect moment. This feels pretty close, he said. And this time, his voice cracked a little too. I just know I don't want to keep pretending, I added. Not with you. He leaned in slowly. There was no rush, no sweeping gesture, just a cautious, almost reverent movement. Like he was afraid I'd disappear if he moved too fast. His hand came up first, brushing the edge of my jaw. Fingertips warm and trembling just slightly. My breath caught. I've wanted to do this for a long time. He whispered, then don't wait anymore. I whispered back and he didn't. His lips met mine, gentle, tentative, searching. It wasn't a movie kiss. There was no orchestral swell. It's just the soft press of his mouth, the faint sigh he let out against me, and the way his hand moved to cradle the side of my face like I was something fragile, precious. I kissed him back. It felt like the moment I'd been holding my breath for finally let go. All the longing, all the tension, everything we'd danced around for months came rushing in. Not in a flood, but in something quieter, deeper, like finally stepping into warm water after standing on the edge too long, when we broke apart.
Oh.
Foreheads rested together. I don't know what I'm doing, I said, breathless. Me neither, he replied. But I want to figure it out, I nodded. Me too. We sat there, breathing the same air, and for once, no words felt necessary. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. We didn't rush to leave the car after the kiss-off. Still buzzing on my lips, we just sat there in the quiet hum of the parked engine, headlights casting faint gold across the sidewalk. It felt like the world had paused just for us, like the silence wasn't empty, but full of something we'd been holding back for too long. Adam finally leaned back, exhaling slowly. Okay, he said, smiling to himself. I guess that's officially the least professional thing I've ever done.
Ah.
I laughed, the tension in my shoulders loosening. Well, considering I faked a flu symptom just to see you 3 weeks ago, I think we're even. He turned to look at me, amused. You what? Yeah, I said, grinning. I coughed dramatically and everything. Should have gotten an Oscar. He shook his head, laughing softly. Unbelievable. Worked. Though, yeah, he said, his voice softer. Yeah, it did. The air between us had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was light, warm, almost teasing. We were still figuring out the edges of this thing. But now that it was out in the open, it felt like the pressure had lifted. Like we didn't have to pretend anymore. I shifted slightly in my seat. So, what now? He looked thoughtful. We keep being honest. No more hints or half-looks. If we're doing this, I want it to be real. I nodded. Same. But we'll have to be careful, he added, a bit more serious now. Clinicus. I don't want you feeling weird coming in for real stuff. Then I'll stop faking headaches, I teased. He nudged me with his shoulder. Appreciated. He sat quietly for a beat, then he added, You scared me, you know, when you started talking earlier. I thought maybe you were about to say you didn't want to see me anymore. I looked at him. I was terrified you didn't. Feel the same? I've been trying not to feel the same, he said, eyes glinting with vulnerability, trying to push it down, keep things appropriate. But it's been killing me every time you walked out of the room. I smiled softly. You don't have to push it down anymore. He reached over, threading his fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And yet it still sent a wave of warmth through my chest. I've never done this before, I said, honest. I mean, not like this. It's letting someone in this way. I know, he said. Me neither. Not really. We sat that way for a while, fingers linked, sharing the same quiet, the same relief. Eventually, he glanced at the dashboard clock and groaned. You know, I probably should have let you out of this car 20 minutes ago. I said. Not moving, but now I'm warm and emotionally vulnerable. So really you're the one keeping me hostage, he chuckled. How dare I? I squeezed his hand. Thank you for not brushing it off, for letting it be real.
Is that day?
Voice dropped. I'd been waiting for a reason to stop pretending. He gave me one. Something about the way he said it made my throat tighten again, not with fear this time, but with something closer to wonder. We talked a little more after that about how we'd take things slowly, how we didn't need to label it yet, and how I should probably find a real doctor for anything serious going forward. I rolled my eyes at that last part, but agreed. He finally walked me to my door, our hands brushing now and then, like they'd learned a new rhythm. Before I went inside, he paused, then leaned in again's a kiss on the cheek this time, slow and certain. "Text me when you're inside," he murmured. "I'm literally right here." "Still," he said, grinning. "Text me." Okay. And when I stepped inside, I did just that. Me. Home safe. Still smiling at him. Me too. More than I should be. For the first time in a long time, I went to bed feeling like something had shifted inside my quietly. But permanently. We didn't have it all figured out. But now that we'd stopped pretending, we could finally start something real, and that was more than enough for tonight. Asterisk, asterisk, it had been 2 weeks since the night in his car, since the kiss, since everything shifted. We hadn't rushed into anything not. Labels, not declarations, just steady, thoughtful steps toward each other. Coffee on Sunday mornings, a shared playlist we built together on slow evenings, and always, always honesty. The thing I noticed most was the quiet, not the absence of words, but the comfort in our silences, like nothing needed proving anymore. We'd already said the most. Terrifying things. Everything after that felt like breathing. Tonight I sat on his couch barefoot, hoodie-sleeved arms tucked under my knees, watching him stir pasta in a saucepan like it was something he did every night. He'd insisted on cooking. I'd offered to help, and promptly failed at chopping an onion without nearly losing a finger. "Your knife skills are a crime," he called from the kitchen, grinning. I smirked, holding up my bandaged thumb. "I suffer for love," he laughed. "Coming over with 2 steaming plates? You suffer for laziness. But I'll allow it." We ate together on the couch, knees brushing, his dog curled up between us like some kind of furry chaperone. Halfway through, he leaned over and wiped a bit of sauce from the corner of my mouth with his thumb, casual, tender my heart still. Fluttered at moments like that after dinner. We sat with our backs against the couch cushions, lights dimmed low, music playing softly from his phone. "I was thinking," he said, voice quiet, "we should get out of town next weekend." I turned to him. "Yeah, it's a cabin just outside the city, nothing fancy. Trees, a little lake, no phone signal." I raised a brow, "No phone signal." He nodded, "Terrifying, I know." I figured. "If we're going to keep doing this, we should give ourselves space to be in it. Just us." Smiled. "That sounds kind of perfect." "You sure?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability slipping in. "It's not too soon." I reached over and laced my fingers with his. We already kissed. Talked. Cried a little well. I cried a little. "I think we've earned a weekend off the grid." His thumb brushed across the back of my hand. "Good." We sat there like that, hands entwined, not rushing, not needing anything but each other. At one point, he leaned over and rested his head. On my shoulder. "You still think this was a mistake?" I asked softly. "No," he said. "Not even close." A comfortable silence followed. The kind that spoke louder than conversation. Eventually, I shifted slightly to look at him. You know what I realized? What? That this whole thing started because I thought I needed a checkup. But what I really needed was to be seen. He looked at me, eyes reflecting a kind of knowing that made my chest ache. "You were. Always worth seeing," he said. "You just needed someone to say it out loud." In that moment, I didn't need flowers or grand gestures or some dramatic proclamation. All I needed was his hand in mine, his breath soft against my neck, and the certainty that he meant every word. I leaned in and kissed him again, this time slower, with less nervousness. Like we were both finally home. When we pulled apart, he smiled and whispered, "Hey. Yeah, next time you fake a flu, I'm charging you double." I laughed. "Deal." The dog barked in her sleep, making us both chuckle. We didn't have it all figured out, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next, because we were in it together, and whatever happened, was just the beginning.